Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm absolutely thrilled that you are here. I am Billy Dees. If you have never checked out our program before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary podcast. You can find us on all of the major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, on down the line. And I say that because we're getting picked up more and more by different platforms, and if you're running across this for the first time, I just want you to know that's where you can find us. You can also find me on Twitter at Billy Dees, pretty much. That's my social media home. We also have a Facebook page, Billy Dees Podcast. Please check us out. We are available there. July is shaping up to be a great month for interviews, and today we're going to talk about business, we're going to talk about marketing, and some other really good stuff. On the phone with me right now is Mike Miller. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing very well, Billy. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you here. Now, Mike is a very busy guy. He's the owner of Miller Golf Enterprises, and that's here in Ohio, and he's also the co-owner of Grassroots Branding and Promotion. And he's an ambassador, kind of a spokesperson, if you will, for a new startup that we're going to talk about, because this is an interesting concept. It's called Fish My Spot. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, too. Very interesting concept. All right, Mike. Well, obviously, the people that follow the show know that I'm based in Ohio. You are here in Ohio as well. Were you always from this area?
Yeah, I've lived in Ohio all my life. Moved around a little bit from, different places. When I was younger, my parents moved a couple of times, but
yeah.
The vast majority I've been in the Canton-Massillon area.
It's a great area. Obviously, we have football here. That's pretty much, in my opinion, I always joke, that's pretty much it. But obviously, we have a lot going on. For those of you around the country, Ohio, I believe, is like seventh or so in terms of the size of the economy. Very diverse economy. Obviously, I always get flack about the corn. We do have corn here. I won't deny it. Very big in agriculture, but manufacturing is still here in Ohio. Technology, very, very big. Columbus, Cleveland, and needless to say, medicine. Some of the finest hospitals in the world are here in Ohio. Of course, everybody knows about the Cleveland Clinic. So we have a lot going on here, and Mike has been in the thick of it for a long time. He's probably got more experience in the business community than I do. So I'm always glad to talk to somebody who knows more than I do. Now, when you were growing up and going to school, you seem to be a natural talker. So were you inclined to go into sales and all those things, or what were your aspirations when you were like in high school?
Well, that's the funny thing. I can't say I had any big aspirations.
Yeah.
I kind of fell into things. I worked when I was in high school. I worked as a house painter.
Okay.
And the reason I did that was my neighbor that lived next door was a contractor and had his own business. And in the summer, it was, very easy for me to just walk next door, jump in his van, and go to work with him. It was kind of like a no-brainer.
Sure.
And he was a very unusual guy, funny guy. He was a big influence in my life because I did spend a lot of time with him, especially through my high school years.
Yeah.
But he was the type of guy that he figured from the time you jumped in his van in the morning, you were on the clock.
Yeah.
And you were on the clock until you got home that night and got out of the van. And you probably spent about 2/3 of the time actually working, and the rest of the time was going to breakfast, stopping at the paint store to pick up paint.
Yeah.
All kinds of things like that. But that's the kind of guy he was. So
wow.
I guess I got a lot of my ideas from him as far as, working and treating people right.
Yeah. And that's important. And in this day and age, I don't know, maybe that gets forgotten a lot. I had this conversation. I'm going to ask your opinion about this. I had this conversation a couple days ago with somebody, and we were talking about how businesses really don't have loyalty to their employees anymore. There was a situation where somebody had worked for an organization for 25 years, and they got a letter in the mail since they were home because of the COVID. They got a letter in the mail telling them that they were no longer with the company. Nobody even bothered to pick up the phone and call them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
I totally agree. There's no loyalty there at all.
Yeah, but by the other side of the coin, one of the things that I brought up was that's true, that's horrible, that's not something that I would have done for sure. But by the same token, it seems like there isn't a lot of loyalty the other way. I mean, most places, it used to be when you got out of school, you went to work for a major company and you worked there for 20, 25 years or whatever, and then you were done. And now everybody skips around. Most people, they're employed at one place or another for 2 or 3 years, and then they move on. So it seems like the loyalty has gone both ways, and I'm not sure that's been really good for the business environment. What's your opinion about that?
Well, I agree. It's the chicken and the egg, which came first. Is it because the companies don't have the loyalty to the worker?
Yeah.
Or is it that the worker doesn't have the loyalty to the companies?
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of a little bit of both, because the companies, if they look at the bottom line,
sure,
and if they can cut you and hire somebody that's cheaper and do the same job, they will do that.
Yeah.
So that in turn, when you're an employee and you're just a number or a body to them, then you're not really going to be loyal. If something better comes along for you, somebody's going to pay you 50 cents an hour more or whatever it may be, you're out the door.
Yep.
So it's that's the kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know when that started or why it started, but it's not good for business, not at all.
My guess is that the shift of the economy to data and technology had a lot to do with that, because those fields are so competitive. And it seems like it used to be here again, if you had a resume that showed you worked here 6 months and there 2 years and there a year and a half, that looked bad. But now they want it to look that way. Their attitude is, if you've been at the same place for 10 or 15 years, you have no ambition. It's almost...
there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's almost like that whole concept has flipped. And so I believe that technology had a lot to do with that. And of course, the automation in the factories and that were certainly a part of that whole picture. But because of the fact now that the landscape has changed and the skill sets that employers need almost vary every 18 months. There's a different way of marketing, and we're going to talk about that. There's a different way of getting the word out there. Traditional media doesn't work the way it used to be. So there's a lot of changing gears. And when you get hired, especially at a small company now, they expect you to be able to talk. They expect you to be a spokesman for the company as well. Do the, whatever it is that you have to do as part of your job. Now, you had a history with golf courses, and I find, how did you get involved with golf courses? Was that something that here again you just kind of stepped into, or was there an opportunity there that just made itself available and you decided to take it?
Well, it's kind of a combination of things. First of all, my family was involved in golf.
Okay.
My grandfather actually built a local golf course, and he was the golf course superintendent for, I believe it was 35 years, and he actually was working on the golf course when he passed away.
Okay.
And he built that golf course from scratch. He was actually a farmer, and he was leasing the farm. He didn't own it. And the fellow that owned the farm got into golf, and he decided it was a good idea to build a golf course. So he came to my grandfather and talked to him about doing it, and it must have sounded better than farming. The two of them actually, neither one of them had any experience in golf, and they designed 9 holes of the golf course on the farm. And that was way back in the days when all of the work was done with a team of horses.
Oh, wow.
And they built the 9 holes and opened the thing up. And I think it was a year later, they ended up expanding to 18 holes. So I guess it might have been in my blood, although I didn't even golf until I was in my 30s.
Really?
And when I started the company, the reason I got into it was I was in sales. I've been in sales forever. Started selling Christmas cards door to door at 11 years old.
Wow.
And so I guess it's one of them things I fell into. And I was selling different things, like I worked for a nut and bolt company, and I started selling to the golf courses just because they were there.
Right.
And nobody else in the company I was working for was doing that, so they anointed me the golf guru for the company. So
that's good.
So I wrote a couple of sales articles for their newsletter and stuff about what you do when you go in and talk to them, what you present to them, that kind of thing. And so I worked there for a while. We did shows. There's several shows that are done in the golf industry, and the big one in Ohio is called the Ohio Turfgrass Show.
Okay.
And it's held once a year. And the company I worked for with the fasteners, we did that show, I think, for like 5 years in a row.
Okay.
And it just was one of those things I enjoyed, dealing with the people, because they're just really good, common, ordinary people, you know.
Sure.
And so they're not the kind of people that when you walk through the door, they throw wrenches at you, which I've had done when I sold chemicals. So,
oh, wow. Well, that's not good.
No, that sometimes you just, you got to be careful. You really do out there.
I guess.
But anyhow, I decided that, one of the companies that I talked to at one of the shows, they had a product called a fly mow. And I don't know if you've ever seen a fly mow or heard of a fly mow, but what they were a mower that worked like a hovercraft. It had a impeller underneath it, which blew air down around the cowling, and this was plastic, because it was light, and it raised the mower up, and it would float, and that's the way you mowed with it, and it was out of England. And the golf courses loved these things because they could trim the tall grass around the sand traps, which they couldn't get any other mower, over the edge of the sand trap.
Yeah.
But this thing they could. And so that just, I love oddball things, that other people don't have. So I talked to the company and actually just started part-time with them, calling on the golf courses and showing them this mower.
Okay.
And from there, it just grew from that.
Yeah. That's interesting. Now, while we're on the subject of mowing, do you still do stuff with that new type of mower? I guess it's like a smart mower. Is that something that you still deal with?
The auto mower.
Yes.
It's a robotic mower that you can, put it in your yard. You use basically the same type of a wire that you use for the dog runs, the buried dog wire.
Yeah.
And it senses that wire when it gets to it and turns around and goes the other way. And so it's basically like a Roomba for your yard, and it just mows your yard and keeps it looking nice all the time.
That's interesting. You had that one video of that one working in the yard, and people were driving by, trying to figure out what it was.
Yeah.
That's that's interesting, and I guess they're really quiet and efficient. Am I wrong? Or
oh yeah, they're totally electric. They run on batteries. It really takes only about $8 to $12 a year in electricity.
Wow.
To run them.
Amazing.
pretty much can be programmed to operate whenever you want them to. They can be mowing in the middle of the night, and they're very quiet. I mean, there's barely a little hum to them if you're standing right next to them. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter when you run it. You can run it, only certain times. You can run it all the time. So really, it depends on the season and how fast your grass is growing.
Yeah.
They actually will sense if the grass is not growing.
Yeah.
And they'll go out and mow around for, 5 minutes. And if it's not growing, they just go back and park themselves and wait, another couple of days. And then they'll go back out and start mowing. And if there's no drag on the engine, they know the grass isn't mowing.
That's amazing.
Or, isn't growing. And under the same type of a thing, if there's a section of grass that grows faster, like maybe it's getting more water or it's over a septic tank or something and it's growing a little faster, the mower senses that. It's all GPS, and it will know after about a month that area needs to be mowed more often. So it will go back to that area.
Amazing.
So it's really a smart machine.
I guess that is that's amazing. Speaking of golf, just regionally here, and I don't necessarily mean the super big pros, but as a recreational sport, I would imagine that COVID has hit the golfing industry, and my impression was that golfing wasn't quite as big as it once was to begin with. I could be wrong about that. What's the state of golf as a sport these days?
No, you're perfectly right that over the past, I'd say 15 years, the golfing has gone down.
Oh, really?
And I attribute that to a lot of different factors. Back in the 80s, Tiger Woods was playing well.
Yeah.
And he was driving the industry for quite a while. Everybody that watched Tiger Woods during, the Sunday tournaments wanted to go out and be Tiger Woods. They had their kids out there. They had, everybody was trying to do that. So he drove the industry for quite a while. And at one point, they were opening 300 plus golf courses a year.
Wow.
And that went on for about 10 years. And then it started to slack off a little bit. And, of course, Tiger kind of went by the wayside.
Yeah.
And now, and this is, my opinion. I can't say I know this for a fact, but in my opinion, a lot of the golfers today are every bit as good as Tiger Woods. And some of them maybe even better. But there's maybe 10 or 20 of them.
Oh.
So people don't focus on one person.
Yeah.
And that's a part of the whole picture.
Yeah.
Now, the other part of the picture is that, 15, 20 years ago, a guy would work all week, and come Saturday, he would go home and he'd tell his wife, he'd say, "Hey, I'm going to go play golf Saturday." Well, that was perfectly okay.
You're right.
Well, times change, and now the wife says, "Well, I don't think so, because you need to stay home and help me with the kids."
Yeah.
Or the wife may say, or not even necessarily the wife, the kids are doing traveling teams, which every sport out there has a traveling team.
Yeah.
And some of these people go, 2 states away for tournaments. Well, guess where the guy that's supposed to be out there playing golf and spending money, he's somewhere else watching a tournament, staying in a hotel, spending money to get there, food. You don't have any money left to play golf when it's all done. So that's another factor. So it's just really a perfect storm that golf is not as big as it was 10 to 15 years ago. So
yeah. With your branding company, what other types of marketplaces do you work in, and what are some of your favorite things to promote and brand and talk about?
Well, the branding company was started with another guy, and the reason we did that was we both did a lot of networking, and we talked to a lot of people on a regular basis, and we felt that, there's startup companies out there, new companies, companies that can't afford, say, a marketing director or something like that.
Yeah.
But they need to get the word out and let people know what they do, what their service is. And that's kind of a niche market that we felt we could fill just by doing networking for these folks.
Okay.
And whenever we're in a group of people, just, we can pass out flyers, we can pass out discount cards, whatever it may be, and let the people know, about the business and try to drive business to that company.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I do with Fish My Spot. And, just promote the company for what it is and what it does and let people know about it. So
yeah,
that's basically how I got into that.
Let's talk a little bit about Fish My Spot, because that's an interesting concept. I'll let you kind of take it. I'll let you present it in your own words. I know a little bit about it, obviously, but I'll kind of let you present the concept and how you guys are going for it.
Sure. Fish My Spot is on, I would say, a very similar type business to Airbnb.
Okay.
Now, Airbnb's been around about 10 years. And 10 years ago, if somebody would have said to you, you can, rent somebody's house for the weekend or for the month or however long it may be, and you go on a website and you find a place where you want to go and you rent the house for a period of time.
Right.
That was a bizarre thing. When I first heard that, I shook my head and I said, I don't think that'll ever work.
Yeah.
Well, here we are 10 years later. It has been going great guns. And a matter of fact, this summer I was scheduled to use an Airbnb until COVID hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were going to get together with all of our kids, and spend a few days in an Airbnb. But Fish My Spot is a very similar concept.
Okay.
And what we do is we connect fishermen, anglers, kids, grandparents, anybody that wants to go fishing with private pond owners. Now, you could go to a state lake and you could spend 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours fishing a state lake, and you may catch a bluegill or you may not catch anything. Most of the private ponds are underfished.
Okay.
They don't get a lot of action, and most of them have some very nice fish in them. There's a lot of private ponds that when you throw your line in, they are hit instantly.
Wow.
So what we want to do is find the owners of these ponds that are willing to put their pond on our website, and we pretty much handle everything. We handle the booking, we handle the fees. We have a $1 million insurance policy that covers the pond owner and the angler. So if anything happens, basically once they put their pond on our site, and it's free, it doesn't cost a thing to do it. And the only real requirement is that the pond has fish in it. So there's not really a size requirement. We find that probably somewhere 3/4 of an acre on up is usually good. If it's smaller than that, it's probably not going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
But we've got as much as 5-acre lakes on our site that have been listed. And the pond owner basically just collects a check once a month when we total up how many people have gone and fished their pond.
Okay.
The pond owner has complete control. They can only, if they want, they can just do certain days of the week. They can do weekends. They can block out times so that, the pond is theirs. So they have complete control. They can say, we want catch and release. You can catch and keep. They can designate species of fish that they'll let you keep, or ones that they want you to throw back in. So basically, the pond owner's in complete control. And we have a set of rules, obviously, that the angler has to follow, and they have to agree to all these rules. And a lot of it's mostly common sense. You don't leave a bunch of trash around.
Sure.
You take care of the owner's property. There may be certain areas that you're not supposed to go. Things like that.
Right.
And they agree to these, when they sign up. And if they violate these rules, then they will be barred from our website. They won't be able to fish with us anymore. So it's a new concept. We've been pretty much 2 years, but it really took us until probably about the last 8 months to really get going. We started with 8 months ago. We had like 6 ponds.
Yeah,
we got 21 now. And we got one up in New York, which that one the guy just found us on the website and called us up and said, "Hey, this is a great idea. I love it. Put me on there." But we do want to go national eventually. We're just in the process right now of building Ohio.
Right.
We're looking in Pennsylvania, West Virginia at this point, and it's just a great concept. It's a good way for, let's say, a grandparent to take some grandkids out and fish. And one of the really nice things about it is when you're fishing a private lake, you do not have to have a fishing license.
Oh, okay.
So that's good because, maybe you don't have a fishing license, but you'd like to take a kid fishing once in a while.
Sure.
So that's not a barrier. You just jump on the website, sign up, and grab your fishing pole.
That's one of the things that strikes me about the concept is that the privacy. You can go to a lake, and even if you're one of those people, it used to be that a lot of people used to fish to kind of meditate and get away just by themselves, or a lot of times they would want to spend some time, like you say, with their children or grandchildren or what have you. But it's getting so that some of these, public areas, they're dirty. There's people playing music real loud and all these other things going on. And this way here, it's kind of like a good way to just have some quiet time outside.
Yes, you're right there. When you book a private pond, the chances are you are going to be the only one there. Now, that's the other thing that we do is if you book a private pond, you can take 3 other people with you.
Okay.
And there again, that's entirely up to the pond owner, but that's what we suggest. So the fee is for, let's say, parents and a couple of kids, grandparents, a couple of kids. It could be 4 adults or whatever. And then if you want, somebody else to come, you can pay a little bit extra. But the chances are when you go, you and your group will be the only ones at that pond. So it's a great place to just have a picnic if you want.
Yeah,
you could
sure.
book it. And you don't even have to fish.
Yeah.
You just want to take a picnic lunch and get away. You can do that.
Yeah, see, that's something. Yeah, that's a great concept there. That part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of people want to do that. They want to get away, but they don't want to go to the wilderness. They don't.
Right.
They don't want to go to Alaska to, just.
Yeah.
So you can just, essentially take a short 1-tank trip, as they call them, and probably a lot less than that, depending on where you're at, and get away for a while. And
and the other thing is, the pond owner, if he wants to let people camp overnight, he can do that.
Yeah.
We can set it up so that's available. We've had pond owners that actually have little cabins built on their ponds, and they can rent those out if they want. If they have a boat that's available, they want to rent the boat, they can do that. They can do anything they want with this, and it's just a great concept, and it really is great for the COVID-19 situation.
Yeah.
Where you want to do social distancing.
Yeah.
Well, you book a private pond and take your family out. You don't have a problem with,
Yeah.
having to worry about a bunch of people. So it kind of played into our hands.
Yeah, that part of it's good. Unless a squirrel sneezes on you. Something
Right,
like that,
right.
you're in good shape. Yeah.
It's just you and the fish.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. So just make sure, I want to make sure the audience understands what this is. If they want more information about this, it's a real easy website. It's Fish My Spot, correct?
Yep, fishmyspot.com.
Okay.
Or you can just use hashtag fishmyspot, and we will come up.
Oh, awesome. So obviously that means you have a presence on Twitter and Facebook and so on, fishmyspot.com.
Right. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Oh, well, you got all the bases covered there, man. You're good.
Well, we try.
That's great. All right. We have been talking to Mike Miller here again, very experienced business guy, Miller Golf Enterprises, grassroots branding and promotion. And he's now an ambassador for Fish My Spot, a very interesting concept, a good way to get away easily locally, let's say, without having to drive into the wilderness or the forest or something. You can take a reasonable amount of time, go somewhere, and share some private moments with your family and so forth. And we want to stress, if you have some land, and there's a pond on there and you want to check this out, Fish My Spot, you go there for both. If you want to participate or if you want to be a customer, both sides of the coin, you want to go to Fish My Spot. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are looking for ponds right now, and we also are looking for anglers. So we've got that going, and at some point we are going to be open for investing also. So
oh, great.
There's some things down the road.
Awesome. Well, we're going to keep in touch with you on this, and at some point I want to get you and at least a couple of other people into the studio. We're obviously limited right now, and it's before a holiday weekend, and that's always crazy. But obviously with COVID, we have concerns about distancing and all that. So I'm actually working on some new space here. We're expanding an area where we can do interviews and stuff. And at some point in the future, I really want you to come in, do an in-person interview and talk about this some more. And so it's a really great concept, and it's always great to talk with you anytime, Mike. I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, Bill, I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to an opportunity to see that new studio.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me tell you, I'll at some point I'm going to tell you the horror story of trying to paint a basement floor and you don't use the right paint and it bubbles up and it peels and oh man, was that a lot of fun? Well,
see, here you knew a guy that painted for years. You could have called me.
I should have called, but you know how it is. You'll get the feeling, I can handle this and it'll work.
Yeah, I know.
And you just dive into it. And the next thing you know, what was supposed to take a weekend took an entire month, but it's behind us now. And so I'd very much like to have you and some other people over to talk about this at some future point. Thank you for being on, Mike.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Let me address the audience once again. Fish My Spot. Do check it out, fishmyspot.com. Whether you are a fisher person, if that's a term, or whether you have some property and you would like to invest in this concept by getting involved and using your property for some possible revenue streaming, do check it out, Fish My Spot. I'm Billy Dees, once again, and I'll tell you, you can find me on Twitter. That's kind of like my social media home, at Billy Dees on Twitter. Also, Billy D's podcast is on Facebook now. I've recently polished that Facebook page up. And I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I have not done hardly anything with YouTube. But that's starting to change. We're We're having a lot of our podcasts, the web version. I have a web camera on for this podcast, so you can see what's going on behind the scenes and in the studio. We're adding some content about equipment, recording techniques, promoting podcasts, digital media in general. So a lot of stuff. Me personally, if you're going to have a YouTube channel, a lot of podcasters just throw the audio up there, which is great because YouTube is like the second biggest search engine. So if people are looking for information, you want them to be able to find you on YouTube. But just to have the audio on YouTube, to me, didn't make sense if you didn't augment it somehow with some behind-the-scenes stuff. And so the YouTube channel is brand new, Billy D's. Do check it out. And subscribe if you like. I am Billy Dees, and until next week, thank you very much for listening to our podcast. Well, hello everyone. I am Billy Dees from the self-titled Billy Dees podcast. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and many more of the best podcast networks. Join me for my commentary and interviews. Follow me on Twitter, real easy to find, at Billy Dees. I am Billy Dees. I'd love to have you listen in.